My name is Michelle. I'm 30 years old, and I never thought betrayal would come from the very people who raised me. It was a typical Tuesday morning at my tech startup in Wichita when my phone buzzed with a message that flipped my world upside down. We're vacationing in Miami with your sister's family. We emptied the joint account. Haha. The words from my parents seared into my mind, their casual cruelty cutting deeper than I could have imagined. I didn't let my fingers tremble as I typed back, "Good luck." Outwardly, I stayed composed, serving coffee to a client with my usual smile. But inside, my thoughts raced. That account wasn't just money. It was my years of savings, the sweat of long nights coding, the sacrifices I made to keep our startup alive, all meant for the family home. They believed they had outsmarted me, flying off to Miami in luxury while mocking me from afar. But they had no idea that for months I had been quietly tracking their shady dealings, their whispered plans, their arrogance. I was no longer the naive daughter they assumed they could steamroll. I had a plan carefully built, and when the time came, they would discover just how far I was willing to go to protect what was mine. Their Miami dream was already on borrowed time, and I was ready to bring it crashing down. This isn't just my story. It's a question for you. What would you do if your own parents betrayed you like this? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear how you would face a betrayal that cuts this deep. 3 months earlier, I'd noticed things weren't adding up. My startup in Wichita was thriving, but the family's joint account meant for the mortgage on our parents' house was draining faster than it should. At 30, I'd poured thousands into it, late nights, coding, pitching to investors, skipping vacations to keep my app alive. My dad kept asking for bigger contributions, claiming the house payments were tight. I trusted him, or at least I wanted to, but his calls came too often, his tone too sharp, like I owed him for existing. One evening, I was reconciling the account when I spotted a charge, $5,000 for a travel agency. I froze. The mortgage wasn't due for weeks, and I hadn't approved any trips. Digging deeper, I found more hotel bookings in Miami, first-class flights, a luxury car rental. My stomach twisted as I traced the charges to a card linked to my mom. She'd never mentioned a vacation, and neither had my sister. I opened my banking app and saw the balance dipping lower every week with no explanation. I started saving screenshots, every transaction, every withdrawal. Then I got a tip from a cousin who'd overheard my mom boasting about a big family getaway. I hacked into an old family group chat, one I'd muted ages ago. There it was. Messages between my mom and my sister planning a Miami trip, laughing about how they'd handle the funds. My sister wrote, "Don't worry, she won't notice till it's gone." I saved that, too, my jaw tight. I wasn't about to let them walk over me. The next day, I opened a separate account at a different bank, transferring my startup's profits there. I called a lawyer I'd met at a networking event, a sharp woman who specialized in financial disputes. "Can you protect my assets if my family's misusing our joint account?" I asked, my voice steady, but my heart pounding. She didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. Start documenting everything." Over coffee at my office, I laid out the evidence, screenshots, bank statements, those damning texts. My lawyer nodded, jotting notes. "This is solid," she said. "We can file for a freeze on the account if they pull anything bigger." I felt a spark of control, something I hadn't felt in months. My parents always favored my sister. Her wedding, her house, her perfect life got all their praise. I'd been the workhorse, the one who paid the bills while they fawned over her. Not anymore. Back at my apartment, I kept digging. Another transaction popped up, a deposit for a Miami beachfront condo rental. I cross-cheated against the group chat. My mom had written, "This will be the trip of a lifetime, just us and your family." No mention of me, no invite, no thanks for the money I'd funneled into their account. I printed the chat logs, my hands steady now. Every night, I backed up my evidence to a secure drive, knowing I'd need it soon. My dad called one afternoon, his voice smug. "Michelle, we need another $2,000 for the house," he said like it was routine. I played along, saying I'd check my funds, but I was done being their ATM. My lawyer had already drafted a letter demanding transparency on the account. I sent it certified mail, no return address. They'd get it and think twice before touching another cent. As I sat in my office staring at the growing pile of evidence, I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about respect, or their lack of it. My parents thought they could use me, discard me, and laugh while doing it. My sister was complicit, basking in their favoritism. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. They'd underestimated me, but I was ready. The account was still active, but not for long. I'd make sure of that. The next morning, my phone lit up with messages from my mom, Ruth. "Michelle, you're too busy with your little app to understand real finances." She typed, her words dripping with condescension. "Leave the account to us." I stared at the screen, my coffee going cold on my desk. Her smugness wasn't new, but it hit differently now, like a challenge I was ready to meet. I didn't reply. Instead, I logged into the bank's website and found the credit card tied to our joint account, the one they'd used for their Miami bookings. With a few clicks, I reported it as compromised and canceled it, cutting off their access to flights and hotels. By noon, my phone buzzed again. My dad, Thomas, this time furious. "What did you do?" "We're stuck at the airport." I could picture him pacing, his voice echoing through the terminal. I kept silent, letting their panic sink in. Back at my office in Wichita, I dialed my lawyer. "They're using the account for personal trips," I said, forwarding Ruth's latest message. "Can we move forward?" She was already on it, drafting papers to sue for misuse of funds. "We'll demand a full audit," she assured me. Her tone calm but firm. I sent her the screenshots. I'd saved every transaction, every text proving their betrayal. The joint account was supposed to keep the family home afloat, not fund their getaway. My lawyer warned it could get messy, but I was past caring. They'd crossed a line, and I wasn't backing down. Around 3, Holly called, her voice sharp and accusing. "Michelle, how dare you ruin our trip?" she snapped, spitting my name like it was an insult. I gripped my phone, keeping my tone even. "Holly, you knew they took my money." She scoffed, claiming it was family funds they were entitled to. I didn't argue. I'd already emailed the bank requesting a freeze on any further withdrawals. The manager, Mrs. Davis, confirmed it would take effect by evening, leaving Thomas and Ruth stranded with no way to book new flights. Holly's call ended with her muttering about my selfishness, but I caught a hint of worry in her voice. Good. They were starting to feel the consequences. I spent the afternoon organizing my evidence, printing bank statements and Ruth's texts. My lawyer called back, saying the court could schedule an emergency hearing within days. "You've got a strong case," she said, citing the clear paper trail. I nodded, my resolve hardening. Ruth's messages kept coming, each one bolder, mocking my work ethic, my obsession with my startup. "You'll never keep up with us," she wrote. I saved that one too, adding it to the stack. Their arrogance was fuel, pushing me to act faster. By evening, I got a call from a family friend who'd heard about the airport fiasco. Thomas had tried to book a hotel on his personal card, but it was declined, too much debt from their spending spree. I didn't smile, but I felt a quiet satisfaction. My parents thought they could outsmart me, use my savings for their joyride. Holly thought she could ride their coattails, basking in their favor. But I'd flipped the script. The bank freeze was just the start. My lawyer was preparing a formal complaint detailing every unauthorized withdrawal. I sat at my desk, staring at the evidence pile, my heart steady. They'd underestimated me, but the courthouse would set things straight. Their dream vacation was unraveling, and I was just getting started. By noon, Holly, my sister's husband, Robert, called me, his voice sharp. "Michelle, you've gone too far canceling those cards." He barked, barely letting me get a word in. "You're ruining our family's vacation." I leaned back in my office chair in Wichita, my laptop open to a spreadsheet of new client contracts. His anger didn't faze me. I'd seen Holly's latest social media post, a photo of her sipping a cocktail on a Miami balcony, captioned, "Living our best life, no thanks to haters." The post had dozens of likes from her friends, but I noticed a few comments questioning where the money came from. I smirked, knowing the truth was about to catch up. I kept my tone calm. "Robert, you know the account was for the family house, not your beach getaway." He sputtered, claiming it was shared money for everyone's benefit. Then Holly jumped in, her voice shrill through the speaker. "Michelle, you're just jealous of our happiness," she snapped, spitting my name like it was poison. I didn't flinch. "Holly, I have proof your parents took my savings without asking," I said, my words deliberate. I emailed them a screenshot, Ruth's text from the group chat bragging about the Miami plans. There was a long pause. Then Holly muttered, "That's not what it looks like." But her voice wavered. She knew I had them cornered. By evening, the story was spreading. A coworker had overheard my call and mentioned it to a friend who shared it in a local Wichita group chat. Soon, messages poured in from old classmates and neighbors. "Is it true your parents drained your account?" one asked. Another sent, "You don't deserve this, Michelle." I didn't respond, but the support felt like armor. A family friend texted, saying she'd seen Holly's post and thought it was tacky given the circumstances. The tide was turning, and I hadn't even said a word publicly. I focused on my startup instead. A major client, Mrs. Carter, had just signed a contract for my app to streamline her bakery's orders. She called that afternoon, excited about the demo I'd sent. "This is going to save us thousands," she said, her voice warm. I smiled, jotting down her feedback while checking my email. Another client wanted a meeting, impressed by my recent pitch at a tech fair. My company was gaining traction despite the family chaos. I worked late, tweaking code and answering emails, determined to keep my business on track. Holly didn't let up. She posted another photo that night, a sunset over the ocean with a caption about families sticking together. I scrolled through the comments and saw one from a mutual acquaintance. "Didn't you use your sister's money for this?" Holly's reply was vague, claiming misunderstandings. I saved the screenshot, adding it to my evidence folder. My lawyer had warned me to keep everything, and I wasn't taking chances. I emailed her the new post along with a note, "They're doubling down." She replied quickly, saying it strengthened our case for the upcoming hearing. The next morning, a neighbor stopped by my office with coffee, saying she'd heard about the Miami mess through the grapevine. "People are talking," she said, shaking her head. "Your parents always bragged about Holly's perfect life, but this is low." I nodded, keeping my thoughts private. The community's whispers were growing louder, and I knew Thomas and Ruth were feeling the heat. A cousin texted, asking if I was okay, saying Holly had called her trying to spin the story. I didn't reply, but I felt the momentum shifting. My parents and Holly thought they could paint me as the villain, but the truth was slipping out. I kept working, signing another client by noon, a local gym wanting my app for membership tracking. My team was buzzing, unaware of the family drama, but energized by our growth. I sat at my desk, staring at Holly's latest post, her smug smile fueling my focus. They thought they could shame me into silence, but I was building something bigger than their lies. The community support was a bonus, but my real strength came from knowing I'd outsmarted them. The hearing was days away, and I was ready to lay it all bare. That evening, I met my best friend, Wendy, at a diner to clear my head. The neon lights buzzed softly as we slid into a booth, and I spilled everything. Holly's accusations, Robert's angry call, the community whispers. Wendy leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "Michelle, you're stronger than they think," she said, squeezing my hand. "Don't let them drag you down." Her words hit like a lifeline. I'd been carrying the weight of my family's betrayal alone, but Wendy's fire reminded me I wasn't. She pushed a plate of fries my way, insisting I eat something. "You're going to win this?" she added, her voice steady. I nodded, feeling a spark of resolve reignite. Later that night, my phone rang. It was my Aunt Patricia, Ruth's younger sister. "Michelle, what's this about you causing trouble for Ruth?" she asked, her tone sharp but cautious. I took a breath and forwarded her the group chat screenshot. Ruth planning the Miami trip with Holly laughing about using my money. There was a long silence. "I didn't know," Patricia said finally, her voice softer. "Ruth said it was all agreed upon." I could hear the doubt creeping in. "Pat, they took thousands from the house fund," I said, keeping my tone even. She promised to talk to Ruth, but I sensed she was starting to see the cracks in my mom's story. The next day, my startup was buzzing. Mrs. Carter, the bakery owner, emailed to say her customers loved the app's new features. "You're a gem, Michelle," she wrote, attaching a contract for 2 more locations. Word of my family drama had spread through Wichita, and somehow it was boosting my business. A local news blog picked up the story, framing me as the underdog entrepreneur fighting family greed. New clients called, citing the article, and my revenues spiked 10% overnight. I spent the morning training my team, thrilled but focused, determined to keep the momentum going. After work, I scrolled through Holly's social media. She'd posted a video from Miami, a beach montage with her and her kids, captioned, "Family first always." The comments were mixed. Some praised her, but others, including a former neighbor, wrote, "Hope you didn't fund this with your sister's money." I saved the video and comments, emailing them to my lawyer. Every post was another piece of evidence showing Holly's arrogance while my savings paid for her tan. I found an older post, too, a photo of her and Ruth shopping for beachwear dated weeks before the trip. I archived it, my jaw tight, knowing it tied them to the unauthorized withdrawals. Wendy texted me later, checking in. "You good?" she wrote. I sent back a thumbs up, grateful for her support. She'd been the only one to see through my family's facade from the start, always calling out their favoritism toward Holly. I worked late, organizing my evidence folder, screenshots, bank statements, now Holly's posts. My lawyer emailed, saying the new social media evidence strengthened our case. "They're digging their own grave," she wrote. I felt a quiet confidence. The hearing was close, and I was ready to face them in court. The next morning, a barista at my usual coffee shop slipped me a free latte. "Heard what you're going through," she whispered. "You've got this." I smiled, surprised by the kindness. The community support was growing. Texts from old friends, emails from local business owners, even a note from my high school coach. They saw me as more than the family scapegoat. Meanwhile, Patricia called again, her voice heavy. "I talked to Ruth," she said. She wouldn't explain the account. I didn't push, but her hesitation told me she was leaning my way. My parents and Holly thought they could spin the narrative, but the truth was breaking through one ally at a time. Monday morning, I walked into the Wichita courthouse with my lawyer. The air felt heavy as we stepped into the small wood-paneled courtroom, my folder of evidence tucked under my arm. My lawyer, sharp in her navy suit, gave me a nod. Across the room, Thomas and Ruth sat stiffly, avoiding my gaze. Holly was there, too, her arms crossed, glaring at me from the bench. I took a deep breath and sat down, ready to lay out the truth. My lawyer stood first, her voice clear. "Your Honor, my client, Michelle Keller, has evidence that Thomas and Ruth Keller misused funds from a joint account intended for family property maintenance." She handed the judge a stack of documents, bank statements showing thousands withdrawn, screenshots of Ruth's texts planning the Miami trip, and Holly's social media posts flaunting the vacation. I watched the judge's face, calm but focused, as he flipped through the pages. My lawyer pointed to a specific text from Ruth. "We'll use the house fund. Michelle won't notice." The room felt smaller, the words echoing in my ears. Thomas stood to speak, his voice gruff. "This was a family account," he insisted. "We had every right to use it for a family trip." Ruth nodded, adding, "Michelle agreed to contribute. She's just overreacting." Their lawyer fumbled through papers, claiming the withdrawals were misunderstood. I clenched my fists under the table. My lawyer countered, presenting a signed agreement that the account was for the family home, not personal expenses. The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed by their defense. Holly couldn't stay quiet. She stood, her voice sharp. "Michelle's just trying to tear us apart," she snapped, pointing at me. "She's always been jealous of our family." The judge banged his gavel, warning her to sit. I met her glare, my heart steady. "Holly, you knew they took my savings," I said, my voice calm but firm. The courtroom hushed. My lawyer slid another document to the judge, Holly's beach video captioned with boasts about their family-first vacation. The judge's expression hardened as he read the comments, questioning the money's source. The hearing stretched on with my lawyer dismantling their excuses. She showed a timeline of withdrawals, each matching dates of their Miami bookings. Thomas tried to interrupt, claiming it was for the family's benefit, but the judge cut him off. Mr. Keller, the evidence suggests otherwise, he said, his tone final. Ruth's face palled, and Holly shifted uncomfortably. I felt a quiet thrill, not joy but certainty. The truth was undeniable, and they were running out of lies. After a brief recess, the judge returned with his ruling. The evidence clearly shows misuse of funds from the joint account. He declared, all assets linked to this account are frozen effective immediately pending a full financial audit. He turned to Thomas and Ruth. You are ordered to repay the withdrawn funds $7,000 to Michelle Keller within 24 hours or face further penalties. The courtroom buzzed. Holly gasped, whispering to Ruth, but I kept my eyes on the judge. His gavel fell, sealing the decision. As we left the courtroom, Thomas muttered something under his breath, but I didn't catch it. Ruth grabbed Holly's arm, pulling her toward their lawyer, who looked defeated. I walked out with my lawyer, the weight of the folder lighter now. She squeezed my shoulder. You did well, Michelle, she said. This is a strong start. I nodded, my mind already on the next steps. The community had rallied behind me, and now the court had too. Thomas and Ruth's arrogance had crumbled, and Holly's outburst only made them look worse. The fight wasn't over, but I was ready for whatever came next. A week later, whispers about my parents' mess reached my office. I overheard my team murmuring about a for sale sign on Thomas's prized vintage car parked outside their house. A neighbor texted me a photo of the sign, adding, "They're scrambling." I sat at my desk, staring at the image. Thomas and Ruth had sold Ruth's diamond necklace, too. According to a local jeweler's gossip, the court's order to repay $7,000 had hit them hard. Their reputation, once polished in Wichua's social circles, was unraveling. Friends who once admired their lavish dinners now whispered about their greed at community gatherings. Holly and Robert weren't faring much better. A client of my startup who knew Robert's real estate firm mentioned he'd lost a major deal. No one trusts him after the court thing, she said over coffee. Holly had stopped posting on social media, her usual stream of perfect family photos gone silent. I heard from a cousin that their mortgage payments were late, their lifestyle crumbling under the weight of their own choices. Holly's attempt to paint me as the villain had backfired, and Robert's business was paying the price. I didn't gloat, but I felt a steady calm, knowing their actions had consequences. That afternoon, Patricia called Michelle. I was wrong about Ruth, she said, her voice heavy with regret. I shouldn't have taken her side without knowing the truth. She'd posted a public apology on her social media, a short note admitting she'd misjudged the situation. I read it on my phone, surprised but relieved. Pat, I appreciate that, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Her words didn't erase the hurt, but they were a step toward justice. The community took notice. Comments under her post praised my strength, calling me an inspiration for standing up. My startup, meanwhile, was soaring. A local newspaper ran a feature on my app, headlined, "Wichita Entrepreneur Fights Family Betrayal Builds Tech Success." The reporter had reached out after the court hearing, intrigued by the buzz around town. I gave a brief interview, focusing on my company's growth, not the drama. The article brought a flood of new clients, restaurants, retail shops, even a car dealership wanting my software. My revenue jumped another 15%, and my team worked overtime to handle the demand. I spent evenings training new hires, my office alive with energy, a stark contrast to my family's downfall. I walked past Thomas and Ruth's house one evening, noticing the faded lawn where their car once gleamed. A neighbor waved, saying, "They don't come to book club anymore." I nodded, keeping my thoughts private. The community's shift was clear. People who once fawned over my parents now sided with me. A local business owner emailed, offering a partnership after reading the article. "Your grit is impressive," he wrote. I saved the message, a reminder that my work was bigger than their betrayal. Holly texted me once, a curt message. "You've ruined us." I didn't respond. Her words were hollow, a last attempt to shift blame. I forwarded the text to my lawyer, who was preparing for the final audit of the joint account. She'd warned me Thomas and Ruth might try to dodge the repayment, but their sold assets suggested they were complying. I kept my focus on my company, signing a contract with a new client, a fitness chain expanding across Kansas. My team celebrated with pizza in the break room, unaware of the family storm, but proud of our growth. Patricia visited my office the next day, bringing homemade cookies. I talked to Ruth, she said, setting the tin on my desk. She's embarrassed, but won't admit it. I thanked her, keeping the conversation short. Her apology had shifted the narrative, and I didn't need more. The community's support, the newspaper feature, and my company's success were enough. Thomas, Ruth, and Holly thought they could outmaneuver me, but their world was shrinking while mine expanded. I was ready for the final reckoning, whatever it brought. 2 years later, I stood at the launch of my company's new app. The Wichita Convention Center buzzed with investors, clients, and local reporters, all there to see my startup's latest milestone. My team had worked tirelessly, and now our software powered businesses across Kansas. I hadn't spoken to Thomas, Ruth, or Holly since the court ruling. I'd blocked their numbers, deleted their emails, and built a life free of their betrayal. The choice wasn't easy, but it was necessary. My peace was worth more than their excuses. Wichita had crowned my company a success story. Articles called me a local hero, highlighting how I'd turned family drama into fuel for growth. My revenue had tripled, and we'd opened a second office downtown. I walked the stage, thanking my team, my voice steady under the bright lights. The crowd's applause drowned out the past, a reminder that I'd built something bigger than their lies. Thomas and Ruth were shadows now. A cousin told me they'd moved to a smaller apartment, their social circle gone. Family gatherings skipped them, their names barely mentioned. They'd sold more assets to settle debts. Their pride eroded. Holly reached out once, sending a letter begging for forgiveness. "Michelle, I didn't mean to hurt you," she wrote. I read it then, tossed it in the shredder. Her words were too late, too hollow. I'd given her chances, and she'd chosen to side with greed. Wendy joined me at the launch, her excitement contagious. "We're pitching a new AI feature next month," she said, grinning over a glass of wine. She'd become my business partner, her tech skills sharpening our edge. We brainstormed late into the night, sketching ideas for our next project. Her presence grounded me, a reminder of loyalty that didn't waver. We didn't dwell on the past. Our focus was the future. Looking back, I learned to protect what's mine, my money, my trust, my energy. My gut had warned me about my family's intentions, and I wished I'd listened sooner. Their betrayal taught me to stand alone, to build my own path without relying on those who'd let me down. I'd turn their chaos into my strength, and that was my victory. Thank you for staying with my story. Share your thoughts. What would you do?